He says he wants to eat a big, giant, hearty meal right before we go fly acro and pull 5Gs and fly him upside down, right? Isn't that the plan? All you can eat?
Extra gravy.
Airport.
I'll do parachutes.
Yeah.
To never use them.
I know. I mean, I offered just to fly by and drop him off, but he didn't go for it. So, yeah.
He wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Y'all come in and get some to eat?
Yeah, we're gonna get some breakfast. Awesome.
It is parachute school.
So Keith, starting a GPO, ton of work.
Now you tell me.
Yeah. Did you just wake up one morning and go, hey, I think I'll start a GPO? Do you have a dream? Sure. There's got to be a story here.
Since I was a little kid, no. I didn't even know what the acronym meant when we made this decision. And so I went with the negotiations with the natural suppliers first, so the hearing aid companies, the sinus balloon companies, and even the capital equipment companies. The common thread there is it's goods. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my team is probably rolling their eyes hearing this, but our cost savings are meaningful. I mean, typically $85,000 or more per doctor per year. But that's day one. Day two through infinity, my team and I work to identify new revenue opportunities for a practice, or ways that they can run the practice more efficiently. Not just for cheaper widgets, but really to vet out and to provide suppliers of technology and services such as DKB.
Yeah, so obviously cybersecurity, you're seeing and feeling the effects of that. Like that's a big deal. When we talk about risk management,
it's a big deal that most of us don't realize
don't really understand it, right? It's not front and center, but it's definitely out there.
We as ENT physicians still mostly practice in 2s and 3s. We feel like, well, folks in Russia or North Korea or wherever these cyber attacks are coming from, they're not going to target my little business here in suburban Dallas, right? And unfortunately, what I've learned from you and so many others is we're exactly the target because we have no defense.
Yeah. You knock off the 7-Eleven before you go after the bank.
That's exactly right.
And your little practice is a lot easier to target than McKesson or Wells Fargo.
Right. And even within the practice, it's the weakest link. So I've learned a lot of vocabulary words from you, like password hygiene and credential stuffing and all those things that were foreign concepts to me. You know, the fact that you can't have your dog's name and your birthday as every password and everything. It completely disempowers the multiple factor authentication that all of our electronic medical records, our practice management software have built in. And so we, as these small businesses, are only as good as our weakest link. Is someone going to click on that attachment in an email that they shouldn't? The typical ransom, while it may not be a lot for a large company, $800,000, $1 million, whatever it might be, a couple $1 million can absolutely bankrupt us, especially as we're trying to emerge from COVID.
Yeah, Keith, and I think like the data that you guys are holding in healthcare, EPHI, obviously highly regulated, and highly valuable to cyber criminals out there. They know that it's regulated, and not only is ransomware encrypting it and locking it up, but majority of ransomware now is exfiltrating or stealing that data and holding it hostage to go, if you don't pay me, not only will I not release it, but I'll also make it available publicly. So then you're dealing with OCR, Health and Human Services, audits, reputation damage with your patients, right?
Exactly. The fines and the penalties for not protecting the data.
Yeah, and civil suits. I mean, look, we live in a litigious society. Patients out there that are a victim of cybersecurity, like an attack. I mean, practice is a victim. They're also the victim, but who are they going to go after? Well, they're going to go after the doctors if they can.
Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. Appreciate it.
So I'm very thankful for what you've taught me and what we've done in USENT. Not only that was so much of our decision to partner with DKB.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the downtime doesn't get factored in, right? The forensics that are required, especially in healthcare, because it's not just about recovery. Well, I'll just restore from backups, because now with cyber criminals stealing that data, exfiltrating it, forensics have to occur to determine if data has been stolen so you can meet your compliance requirements. And that takes time. And it can take weeks to really determine whether that data has been stolen and what your reporting requirements are going to be.
As is true in all of medicine, prevention is most of the battle.
As is true in cybersecurity, 100%, right? So let's talk a little bit about insurance and cyber insurance. As a provider, as a healthcare professional, you're obviously very well versed in insurance and how that works and payers.
If anyone can be, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's a true statement.
yeah. You may not be an expert on it. That's very difficult.
If I'm an expert this morning, I will be obsolete this afternoon.
There you go.
Changes that fast.
Yeah. What we're seeing now is cybersecurity insurance and the difficulty of capturing that. And I think it's a lot like life insurance in that, if I'm super healthy and I can prove that I'm healthy and I log it, they take body fat percentage, they draw blood, they look at my lifestyle. Let's just forget about the flying upside down and parachutes and that kind of thing. To all the insurance people. The life insurance person is not watching that, right? Obviously, I'm going to get a better rate. I'm going to get better coverage. It's the same way with cyber insurance. But I think what we're seeing now is because these insurance payers are spending so much on recovery, the forensics, the downtime and lost revenue, and to top it off, the ransoms, right?
Even if you have DKB and a very established insurance company, counsel, you usually have to pay the ransom, right? I mean, that data is locked up.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one thing I hope people understand is, that's just a given, and everything else is optional. Meaning, how prepared are you ahead of time?
Yeah. Hopefully, right, you can get in a situation where you don't have to pay that ransom, to where you can recover, you can get through it. It's very painful, but that's not always the case. Sometimes that ransomware payment is actually less than the downtime.
And is that also
As much as I hate to say it, right, as much as you hate to pay an extortionist, right, and pay for that, you're having to pay that ransom really to protect your patients and to protect their data. And it's unfortunate to have to give money to a criminal that just successfully extorted you for money, but it is what it
they
is.
may still sue you. And I think that's an extension of the Hippocratic Oath. It's our fault.
What we're seeing is insurance is just much more difficult to capture. And the insurance providers are really raising the bar to go, your health in terms of cyber hygiene and maturity of your systems needs to be at this level in order to qualify for insurance or to get coverage that's going to be affordable. And so we're seeing those insurance payers really drive up maturity levels. Because look, if you're out there in your practice, your small business, and you don't have cyber insurance, that's a huge risk. Can you imagine practicing without having medical malpractice?
And I understand that concept, but yeah, most of us would never leave our practices that exposed. I have every kind of disability insurance and every kind of life insurance and overhead disability and key man insurance to take care of my partners if something happens, as you fly me back. So I love that USENT has evolved into a voice for this. So my question to you, does the average medical practice IT provider perform these functions well enough to prevent the typical cyber attack, or does it require a lot more expertise?
It's definitely a specialty, and the parallels are there in healthcare. I'm not going to go to my PCP, my family practitioner, if I need surgery, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to have them clear up my sinuses and tonsillectomy and all of that, right? I'm going to come to you.
So we all can't be experts in everything.
Can't. No, and so finding a IT services provider that has that specialty and works in cybersecurity specifically and has dedicated staff is so important. Having done this for 150 physician offices and doing medical records transformation, clinical transformation with Tenet Healthcare and 60 hospitals, right? Coming out of that and then building a company that is healthcare focused, but most importantly has cybersecurity first. Not only a designated department to specialize that, but doing ongoing cybersecurity training and having that awareness in every position that's touching IT is so important. And with the number of vulnerabilities we've seen, the number of attacks, especially in the past few years, I think if you don't have security professionals within your IT practice, you're quickly becoming obsolete.
Things have gotten so complicated now, it's led to the necessity of specialization.
It has, and you've got to have a larger IT practice for that. We've got, at this point, we've got over 55 on staff, and within that, lots of specialties, and with that, experts in security.
Do you overlay existing IT providers for a practice, or does DKB really like to do everything soup to nuts?
So it really depends, and it depends on, one, the size of the practice. I think if the practice is big enough with multiple locations to where maybe it makes sense to have someone that is focused on IT and that generalist on staff, then we will come in and overlay, supplement them, create that partnership. For a smaller practice, though, for say less than 20 total on staff.
Most ENT practice.
Most, right. I would say it's really hard to justify a salary in-house and an outsourced managed service provider.
Certainly a 4, 5, 6 physician practice, it's unlikely to have an in-house IT person.
Right.
And that threshold may be more 12, 15, 20 physicians, of which there are only a handful of ENT groups that are even that big, to be honest.
I think where it's on an hourly basis, that becomes difficult. And the reason why is if you're paying someone hourly, it's most likely going to be reactive, and you measure success in terms of how low can I get that bill and how expensive is it each month.
Well, that's
the problem,
how we're our administrator, right? Is cutting costs.
Yeah. The problem is that's like ER services. You're really not doing anything proactive.
Yeah.
And if you're measuring success in IT strictly based on that cost, what are you going to bring that down to? You're just going to bring it down to emergency care. The danger is not investing the time to raise the level of maturity of IT of cybersecurity, and therefore reducing your risk and reducing your likelihood to be breached.
It's like so much in life, right? Spending a little bit of money up front, because it's manageable up front from a cost perspective, can just save you a cataclysmic spend later.
Yeah.
That's true in a lot of areas of life. Well, we're thankful at USENT to have your partnership.
Yeah, we love working with you guys. Like you said, ENT is such a critical specialty to our economy, to healthcare overall. And can't think of a better place to be serving the healthcare community.
Our vulnerability really as any cog in the healthcare system. Personally, I have 2 medical device companies. Well, we run clinical trials there. They're dissolvable implants, so it's not like an implantable defibrillator, for example, that would constantly send data to the company. At Sleep Vigil, which is a remote patient monitoring company, so we monitor patients that have sleep apnea through consumer wearables like Apple Watches, Garmin's, Fitbits, Oura Rings. It seems to me we're vulnerable because we're actively collecting PHI from watches and rings and everything, every fitness tracker known to man, and that could be breached right now.
Absolutely. I mean, anywhere where you're creating a data store with private health information, with data, healthcare information that could be tracked back to that patient, then
Even if it's
you've got
something-
data to protect. The key is really on how that data has been architected and has it been set up in a way to where you can't trace it back to that patient. If you're just getting data, like you said, O2 levels and an account number, that data in itself would probably not be considered EPHI.
But we have them linked to patients.
But once it's linked to that patient's name or any identifiable information to that patient, then it becomes EPHI, and that's where you need protection around it. You put security controls in place to reduce the risk of an event and reduce the impact if there was an event.
To all of my wonderful colleagues that are bringing the next generation of medical technology and devices and pharmaceuticals, these ransomware attacks are not just for hospital systems and practices.
Your business is built on innovation, and it's built on the data that you're pulling together. Very proprietary often, especially as you're going through getting FDA approval. And if that data is locked up in ransom, if that data is stolen and published publicly, it's very, very damaging. And so I think it makes it a huge target.
The whole process of applying for a patent is publicizing it, right? The first step that you do is you file a provisional patent application, which within a matter of moments, it seemingly, you can Google and read it.
Yeah.
So your competitors can read what you're doing. So many in the industry keep things as trade secrets, but that's very vulnerable.
Yeah, not to be an alarmist, but I would say if that's your situation, then your risk is very high because that data is especially sensitive.
Many companies are in this situation.
Yeah, but you're also dealing with attacks on the backups themselves. Remember, these cyber criminals are very sophisticated.
You mean they don't only attack the primary?
They do not attack the primary. Once they get in, they're looking for the backups, and they're going to take out those backups. Yes, often first. There is a certain expertise on architecting backups that can be managed appropriately, monitored for the recovery of that, but most securely that backup being resilient from a cyber attack.
So you don't even have to fly me around to make me nauseated just thinking about how much risk we're walking around with all the time.
Yeah.
In the case of corporate espionage, how often do you see just competitors sending cyber attacks, ransomware, et cetera, to their competitors? I would imagine
I would imagine that's out there. We don't see that. I know that the majority of the attacks are on foreign soil, especially from countries where extradition is impossible or difficult at least. Russia, China, Iran. But look, there are cyber terrorists here because it's very lucrative.
Again, circling back, that's why it's worth it to set up defenses.
It is. Yeah, having the controls in place proactively is really the only way you can prevent an attack or reduce the impact of an attack.
If someone is listening to this and they're nauseated about it and they want to do something about it right now, what's the first step?
I think having a high-level security risk assessment, at a minimum, just a consultation to talk through something that DKB would be absolutely happy to do, and to work with a practice just to talk through what risk currently looks like. What does their IT look like? What is their situation? Do they have cyber insurance? Have they ran into challenges getting cyber insurance because certain security controls aren't in place to get that?
Have you been declined before?
Correct. So one of the things we do is do a security risk assessment through tools to do an X-ray, if you will, and start surfacing information on the practice to understand where their risks at. And then if you want to go further, then we can go the MRI route and dive much deeper and get a full health scan of the practice to understand where those vulnerabilities at. There's a real order to cybersecurity, just like any security in your house. You're obviously going to lock the doors before you pay for an armed guard and dogs and build a 10-foot wall around your house. But you start with what's most cost effective and has the biggest impact. Let's invest in the big bang for the buck. What we do is help determine and dial in how secure is secure enough. Where does that level need to be? And what's the fastest, most cost effective way to get to secure enough? Based on the evidence provided by looking at your systems, based on the conversation around that, and then threat intelligence. So understanding the enemy, just like you would understand illnesses, viruses, bacteria. You're looking at the threat. We're studying the threat all the time.
Are there new threats, hourly, daily? It seems like it's ever evolving.
It is ever evolving. It's absolutely daily, and our team monitors those. We have a great relationship with the FBI, with Center for Internet Security, with CISA, which is a Department of Homeland Security, to protect our critical infrastructure, and understanding where there have been new vulnerabilities found. And so we're staying on top of that.
Word out.